Hey guys! So, in this video we are going to talk about dealing with legacy CSS. So let's get into it. Now this I think is fairly relevant actually to a lot of people, especially for those poor suckers out there who start working at a big company and they have these wide eyes and idealistic views of how they are going to make an impact on the code base and how they're going to change things for the better. Well, I'm here to tell you that once you settle in, you will start realizing that that is not so likely to happen. Well, maybe it is. Maybe you're really lucky and I was just really unlucky when I had to deal with this thing. So basically what I want to tell you here is that if you are if you're in the sort of situation where you don't have a problem with legacy CSS, and if you're either working in a greenfield project or you are a fortunate person indeed. Because in my personal experience, no one cares about good CSS practices at scale. Unless it's like YouTube or Google or Facebook or honestly, I haven't actually checked Facebook's CSS, but I checked YouTube's CSS and I see that there is a structure to the CSS. Don't know if it's a good structure, but there is a structure. But at least for what I can see, large companies don't really think about this, and most companies don't actually think about this. CSS is this kind of... I won't say it's the lost art, because it is an art, and doing good CSS, making CSS good is extremely tricky, but it's somehow, I think it is because it's too simple. I think that it's the same problem that we have with, I think I've said this in a previous video, you have this issue where humans make this really dumb thing, or we do this really stupid thing that we make the assumption for some reason that if something is easy to comprehend to us, we assume that it's easy to do. It's like with music. Or, well, not necessarily music, but let's say photography or design. Our perceived value is very tied into how difficult we conceive something to be. So designers usually have a really hard time selling their products because people think that the price tag is too high because, hey, it's just design. I mean, how long can it take to make an icon, right? Well, it takes a lot of time. And getting CSS right takes also like a lot of time. And it's only when you get it wrong when you realize how bad it can get. So how do you deal with CSS that has gone wrong? Well, what most people do is that they do the append only thing that I see all the time. Basically, I will go out on a limb here and just pull some number out of thin air and just say I think that close to 100% or 99% of all code bases with legacy CSS has the same style of fixing problems with CSS. Which is that you create a rule with higher specificity that overrides the thing that you already declared. I think that the cascading part of CSS is probably the reason why CSS never gets fixed. It's the reason. I think because you have an option to not actually fix the thing, and when you have that option, which is a quicker way, it's much worse, but it's quicker, you go with that option instead. So, how does Fredrik advocate fixing CSS? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I actually have some thoughts on this. I've actually done it. So here is how I did it at my previous job. Well, did it is a strong word. How I approached the problem. And this is not my idea. I think it's a genius idea, and it is... I can't actually remember who I should credit this for. Let's just say that there was this genius person. It's probably something that I read on CSS Tricks, because that's like my go-to place for everything CSS. And the idea is called the shapefile. What is the shapefile? I am once again very glad that you asked. The shapefile is a CSS file where all your dirty hacks live. What do I mean by that? Oh, great question. You are really on the money today. So you see, when you want to fix CSS, the issue is that usually what CSS will do is that when you create this nice new shiny component that should fit into your nice interface somewhere, you will create that thing, you will put it in there, and it will break because there's global mutations and inconsistencies in all these rules that mutate how it looks. Now, what usually people do there is that they start putting in styling rules on their component to kind of fit in with the issues that are caused by the CSS mutation that's happening in the environment that they are putting their component into. That's wrong. Don't do that. Don't do that. What you should do is that you should create your component in isolation. In other words, if you create a panel or a modal or something like that, and you put it into somebody's page or into the legacy system that you are adding this thing into, right? And there's a bunch of CSS bullshit around that messes up your nice shiny component. Don't compromise the integrity of the component. Use the shapefile. So the idea here is that the shapefile is this thing that you put at the absolute end of your build cycle or of your HTML page. And that thing is there to include the things that you need to do, the hacks you need to add in order to make your shiny nice component, or rather to nullify the mutations that are coming from the environment. So if you have some let's take a dumb example. You say that you have a super specific CSS rule somewhere that puts all your colors to red. Well, your component needs to have text color of black, say. So instead of overriding with specificity or just doing important on your component, you make that in isolation with outside of this mutated hostile environment, and when it looks perfect, you put it in and you see, hey, these are all the mutations that are coming from all that legacy CSS, and you create the overrides to fix those issues in the shapefile. And then you put a comment explaining that we are doing this because these rules are affecting these things. Now, the idea here, which is genius in my opinion, is that if you ever get to a point, and I'm sorry, but this never happens. I just odds are that the shapefile is probably going to live there forever, ever. But on the off chance that you actually do the right thing and get to a point where you fix the legacy CSS, in other words, you start fixing all the issues that have caused this global mutation in the first place. The beauty of this is that once that has happened and these rules are being removed and all that specificity that you needed to override in the shapefile is gone, the idea is that you can simply remove the styling that you added to the shapefile, because now your component is going to work perfectly. You never had to compromise the integrity of the component. You just created some rules that made it work the way that you wanted. And now that all that global mutation legacy is gone, you can just remove those styling rules and everything is going to be beautiful. And that has, at least in my experience, been a pretty great way to approach this problem. I hope you find it useful. Have a great day.